Hey guys, what's up? It's Charles Floate here and welcome back to the channel. And welcome to a brand new video that may just be the most requested video I have ever had. To the point I've literally had dozens of you emailing and DMing me, asking me for this update analysis video. Now, I didn't want to drop anything until I had concrete data because, as you're about to find out, this update was truly all over the place and is seemingly the most impactful update Google has released since the December core update of 2020. I also just want to preface this video by saying that this is coming out only 4 days since Google announced the update was over, and things could change in the very near future. Though I am confident with my past experience, which is over 13 years in the SEO industry, that all of this advice is accurate and as of now, and will be beneficial to most of you out there doing SEO campaigns. But before we get started, don't forget to smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you never miss one of these videos ever again. And without any further ado, let's jump into things. So the first things we need to talk about are Google's announcements they made on Twitter and their blog, and the actual date ranges that this update came out with. So firstly, on May the 25th, Google dropped this tweet saying the update had come out. And then on June the 9th, Google dropped another tweet following up saying that it had finished and that it completed rolling out. If you want to go ahead and follow this account and the Google Search Liaison account on Twitter, they always drop whenever a core update is being announced. However, they don't generally drop when another type of update is announced. They tend to ignore those kinds of one where they're called shadow updates for a reason. And before I actually jump into the date range itself, just a quick shout out to Ryan Murton, because he gave a fantastic tweet that happened a week before, where he basically predicted that a core update was going to be happening in the weeks following. And the reason of why he predicted that and why he tweeted that is due to this, which is the actual date ranges that we saw volatility in the SERPs related to this core update. So on May the 15th and 16th, we actually started seeing some of that unusual movement that looked like a massive update was coming, or a massive update was actually happening already. On May the 25th, that's when Google actually made that announcement. And then June the 9th, that's when Google confirmed that the rollout had completed. However, we still saw movement and volatility on June 10th and the 11th, and it's now June 13th as of recording this, and yesterday and today it has been a lot less volatile. So it does look like as of June 11th it had actually completed. Now, in terms of the actual days where we saw the most movement, and we saw movement that had affected the most websites, those would be May the 16th, May the 25th, and June 1st to the 6th. Not June 1st and 6th, that's June 1st to the 6th. Those were the dates that we saw the most movement. Yes, there was movement across the entirety of the time period. However, those are the dates where we saw the most actual volatility and movements in the SERPs. And before we jump into the actual analysis of what's been affected, I just want to cover some important footnotes for this core update. So this was a truly core update. It affected every niche, it affected every language, and it affected every country. So no matter where you are, what language you speak, or what niche you're in, you are probably affected in some way. Yes, there are going to be some sites that are just not affected at all, but they are going to probably be the rarity because of how impactful this update truly was. And if you're actively doing SEO, you are probably affected in some way or another. And unfortunately, as is the case with these core updates, what seems to be a theme of these core updates, authority wins again. Unfortunately, authority just seems to be trumping everything over and over again, to the point where in the next few years it might just be all DR90s in every single goddamn SERP we deal with. And on a personal note, or should I say personal note, almost all of my concentrated sites, that's the sites that I actually concentrate and put effort into, almost all of them went up. However, almost all of my sites that are either neglected or they're thin content that needs updating or changing, or I was lazy, or I used some kind of black hat tactics or auto-generated content. Now almost all of those sites, they were down, and they were down badly. So this update does seem to be somewhat of a quality update. However, we're going to get onto some reasons of why it really isn't as well shortly. A lot of people in the underground discussions and communities and chat rooms that I'm a part of have been calling this the Snippet update. And that is because a ton of sites, and that is some sites, had literally all of their featured snippets removed. And this is not the first time this has happened. This is just the first time this is happening in a specific Google core update. Now I'm going to give a shout out to Chris at Niche Safari. He did a really good video back in January, I believe, on how several sites that he's dealt with and several sites that his friends and SEO colleagues have dealt with have got entire site-wide bans on feature snippets. And now, in my opinion, what has happened is there is now a snippet authority filter in place. So essentially, your website needs to hit a certain threshold, a certain filter, a certain level of authority, of trustworthiness within your niche. And in my opinion, it is niche specific. You have to hit that certain level of authority just to even show in the feature snippets, just to even get them in the first place. And it is a way, in my opinion, of Google trying to combat some of that misinformation out there, some of those SEOs who build dodgy kind of feature snippets, who try and manipulate information, stuff like that. It's a way to try and combat that. However, in reality, I think it's actually just going to hurt a lot of small sites and a lot of small bloggers who actually put out genuine, really helpful information, because I've seen a lot of those kind of sites get hit and had all of their feature snippets removed as well, even though they were actually the best answer previously. So if your site has been hit by this snippet authority filter, then you're going to have to try and get your authority up in some way, either be it on-site topical authority or link authority. I'm not 100% sure how this filter works. It is just from my own analysis thus far that it has been implemented by Google as a genuine change going forward, rather than just a snippet ban that was happening prior. Likewise, with the introduction of this snippet authority filter, Google has done a massive cleanup of the knowledge graph with this update as well. In terms of the actual SERPs showing knowledge graphs or showing certain sites or certain sources within those knowledge graphs, my data is showing up to a 5% drop off, which is in actual terms gigantic for the size and quality of the SERPs. So again, it might be some kind of filter. In my opinion though, Google has removed several sources for the graph, which essentially before it was pulling things like Wikidata, things like Twitter, all sorts of things from journalist level websites, news level websites, all of that kind of stuff as well. But Google has since removed several sources from that graph, hence the drop off in the number of them in the first place. That is my opinion, of course. It could be wrong, but it is seemingly so far correct, because in the ones that have been removed or the ones that have changed, it has been because a lot of the data from the same websites that were there previously has then since been removed, and those sites aren't showing for any kind of knowledge graphs anymore. Now, one of the biggest parts of this update is Google's change in terms of direct intent and multi-search intent for queries. Now, in terms of what I mean by this, it's kind of a double entendre. So in terms of direct intent, that means that Google knows that a searcher is directly meaning a specific intent search, and multi-search intent means basically that that a user could be having multiple ideas around a search. For an example, it might be a homonym, which basically is a word that can have multiple meanings. Things like bark, which could be the tree bark or a dog barking, a bat, which could be a basal bat or a flying animal bat, pound could be the pound, which is the British pound, or to pound somebody, or to the pound on a phone dial has multiple meanings again. Right could be the right as in the direction, or being correct as in being right. All these kinds of things are now showing multiple different queries, and actually BAT is one of the most is one of my personal favorites to check every time an update comes round, because it has so many different meanings in terms of the US intent, because it can mean bat in terms of the animal, it can mean bat as in British American tobacco, it can mean bat as in baseball bat, and that SERP really heavily changes every time there's a serious core update. So if your page simply doesn't match the intent Google wants, and bear in mind Google could be putting 2 commercial pages there, then it could be 2 informational pages, then it could be 2 etc, etc, and if your page simply doesn't fit the intent that Google wants, well then I guess screw you, unfortunately. That's just how this update has rolled round. However, you are going to want to try and match the intent as much as possible to what Google is doing. If the number one post ranking is a blog post, do a blog post. If the number one thing ranking is a product category page, do a product category page. Those kinds of things. It's very simple to check what Google wants you to build a page for them. So finally, we get on to the juicy information that you guys all wanted to see. What was actually affected by this core update, either positively or negatively, the specific things or signals that had been affected. So the first 2 are actually kind of in tandem with each other, however they are different things. Now, pragmatic SEO sites, for those that don't know, essentially you develop sites that pull data from databases or from God knows where else, and it combines it into a usable piece of information for a website. I'm talking, those statistics websites, those Whois websites, all sorts of those kind of websites out there, list websites, etc., that are purely trying to generate pages, that'll generate rankings, that'll generate traffic, that'll generate revenue from clicks. That is what I am meaning by pragmatic SEO. Likewise, thin websites were also hit. Now, auto-generated sites, this is where I'm talking about those sites where they're building millions or hundreds of thousands of pages that are all auto-generated content, generally kind of crap content. And Google has been trying to go after them for the last several months, if not years now, because of the popularity that these tools have gotten. Now, Google has been successful to an extent with hitting these sites. However, they have not really pulled off a complete mission victory. I wouldn't even say they've really won a battle here, to be honest. Realistically, most of the sites that are actual true auto-generated pieces of crap, they've lost about 80 to 90% of their traffic. Some have been completely nuked. However, the majority have lost about 80 to 90% of that traffic. But considering a lot of those sites were doing millions of visits before and they cost next to nothing to build in the first place, losing 80% of the traffic and still having 1 million visitors a month when it cost a few $1,000s to build the site in the first place really isn't that big of a bummer for these guys anyway. So, as I said, to an extent, auto-generated content sites were hit. Thin and pragmatic sites were hit in general. They weren't hit nearly as badly as auto-generated content sites, but they were hit overall. And in fact, from my own kind of research and from my own sites and from my own portfolio, in general, longer form content did seem to fare better in this update than thinner content. So a lot of people have been saying that it was a content specific update. It's a core update. It's not going to be content or link specific. It's a core update, which means it affects the rankings of everything. Now, onto a specific thing that was hit was redirects. And I put redirects at the top of the list because they were actually a very interestingly hit part of the algorithm. Because at the very start of the algorithm, when it first dropped all the way back in May 15th, 16th, redirects actually saw a positive impact. So sites that had redirects going to them, either an age redirect, like spy domain, 301ing to the site, or even multiple redirects, they actually saw a positive boost. So their ranking started going up in the first week or two of the update ranking. However, then after the fact, that during the update, they kind of got nuked off of the face of the earth. So they started dropping heavily. I'm talking 30, 40% losses on some sites that have got heavy redirects going on. Even some sites that have just got a couple or handful of redirects going on as well. Those sites got hit pretty badly as well. And towards the end of the towards the end of the update, they did start to see a slight bounce back as well. So redirects were literally a roller coaster of this one, because you went up, then you went down, then you went up a little bit again, and you kind of stayed at that plateau. So redirects were the most bouncy of all the signals from this update by far. Then we have internal linking. Now, internal linking was by far the biggest independent factor, in my opinion, for affiliate sites and for e-commerce sites, because I saw a ton of sites that just didn't have any internal linking really going on at all get completely nuked. Likewise, I also saw a lot of internal linking that was non-contextual. So that means, people write those huge 2,000, 3,000 word blog posts, and then right at the bottom of the article, they list 10 other posts that are related in a list where they're non-contextual. Those kinds of posts got smashed. You now need to make sure all of your internal linking is contextual, because Google really, really hated internal linking that was non-contextual in this update. However, if you were dealing with a really big authoritative website, I'm talking DR90s, DR80s, it worked the opposite way around. So if you were doing non-contextual internal linking, you actually saw a benefit from doing that. So remember, when you're dealing with these core updates, your site isn't going to be the same as Healthline or WebMD or any of these gigantic sites. You need to be looking at competitors that are relative to you and your situation, because your site and the SEO that you're doing for your website isn't going to be the same as the massive conglomerate authorities that are in your SERP as well. Likewise, load time, ads, and heavy rich media assets were hit really hard. It wasn't hit nearly as hard as auto-generated content or redirects or internal linking or things like that. However, in terms of an update hitting load time and specifically hitting really heavy pages and heavy images and things like that, this update did go a bit above and beyond from those other ones. So making sure that your entire website's load time, and specifically the most visited pages on your website, making sure those pages have the best possible load time possible, and making sure, again, you're reducing the size of your images, you're reducing the size of GIFs, you're reducing the size of anything, and you're reducing embeds, you're reducing ads, all of that kind of stuff, to make sure that your load time is effective. Again, though, it is relative. So making sure that your load time isn't sacrificing assets or revenue generating assets as well, or user signal engagement signals, all that kind of stuff. Make sure you're not sacrificing that just to get your load time up, and making sure that your load time is relative. So you go and check the load times of your top 10 competitors' pages, see if your load time is better than all of them. If it is, good. You probably don't need to do any more than that realistically. And the final thing that was not hit but actually saw a boost, likely due to the fact that authority saw a boost, was parasite SEO. Anyone in the affiliate SERPs has seen a takeover recently of SF Gate and all of these stupid newspapers and news articles and stuff where you can buy a sponsored article in there taking over. This update gave them even more of a boost, so those guys are smashing it even more than they have been before. So anybody out there doing parasite pages, start hitting those up even more so, because literally every single one of my parasite pages went up during this update. And that's it from this update video. Thank you once again for watching. If you aren't already, make sure to hit that subscribe and the bell notification button so that you don't miss any of my content in the future. I am most active on Twitter. You can follow me there at Charles_SEO. My Facebook is facebook.com/thecharlesfloat, and you can access all of my free and premium training at charlesfloat.gumroad.com. Thank you. Please drop a comment down below with your thoughts on this video, what you'd like to see next, and any of your experiences with this update. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.